I always screw those up. Senator Bernt, how are you?
Doing good, bud.
Good, good. We finally made it. You and I kind of been communicating for over a year. We finally get there, baby.
You can't put me over on the other side of the rotunda with those shenanigans guys over there. So,
man, listen. I'm not in politics. I've never been in politics, but the things I've heard off air recently, I'm like, oh, that sounds like just wild chaos, baby. Like,
it's all good.
It must be a good time.
Yeah, you reached out to me at the very beginning of your podcast, and man, I don't know what was going on. I should have went on then, but I'm glad we finally connected because your podcast is blowing up. Glad to be here.
Thank you.
Yeah,
thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Like, and again, it's not the Matt Todd show. I focus on you. I focus on other leaders. Right. The thanks is really for the participation of the leaders of Idaho who want to communicate.
It's my pleasure.
Listen, you are running something that's very near and dear to my heart, right? You're running a bill focused on cell phones. Right. I have a huge concern with technology as it's been integrated, both personal technological devices and then school administrative devices within the state of Idaho, public education. And private schools, you can do whatever you want. But from my standpoint, it's, hey, look, if it's not helping the educational system, if it's not helping the classroom, if it's not helping kids get better, why is it there? And cell phones are things that everybody is sending with their kids to school. And it's tough. It's tough to do. So talk to me about what you're doing.
Right. So I would say about a year ago, about now, there was at Boise State University, they have this public policy center. I forgot the name of this, the institute that they have of learning, but they invite folks in to give perspective on different topics. David Brooks was just recently in town, but last year it was Dr. Jonathan Haidt. And for your listeners, I'm sure most people already know about his book, The Anxious Generation. So we were able to have dinner with him, and we went to his symposium afterwards. But my seatmate in District 21, Representative Petsky, we sat down afterwards and like, we need to do this. We need to do this. We need to do it now because the evidence is staggering. It's absolutely staggering. And these cell phones are so addictive, and it's not the kid's fault. I mean, you have 3 or 4-year-olds. I have nieces and nephews. You give them a cell phone and they already know how to work it.
Right.
They know how to.
Their little tiny fingers go so fast. If you're listening to this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or any other audio-only platform, please jump down and give it a quick follow and a review. The Ranch Podcast is the only podcast in the state of Idaho that has access to this many Idaho leaders, and your support is greatly appreciated.
They're watching movies, man, and so it starts young. And so we were very interested in bringing a policy to the state of Idaho. We sat down with Dr. Bob, West Ada School District. I know.
Yeah, Superintendent Bob. Yeah, 100%.
He's great. He speaks highly of you. Met with him last week. We chatted about this a little bit as well. We sat down with him and, his staff and thought, hey, how can we work this out? What can we do? What are some different talking points?
Right.
How is it going with you guys? Because this cell phone policy has been in place for a while. They've been sort of seeing what works, what doesn't work. And we actually went to a classroom at Meridian High School, and we met with the student body leadership council class. And what we learned that day was unbelievable. So just some stories. Can I tell a story?
Look, I am all ears, man. Because and again, thank you for elaborating on this, because people in general do not know how impactful this is for school age people. Right. Like it is just so it's
so hard though, just to backtrack a little bit. When you're a parent and you're like one of the guys who just dig deep and you focus a lot, and you're actually one of the select few that are in front of it with your kids instead of 5 steps behind. And because kiddos are smart, they're very, very smart. And so we just knew immediately that this is something that we needed to do. And
so, what did you hear at Meridian High School then? Like, what?
So we were in a classroom, and we just wanted to listen. Honestly, we weren't there to talk. We just listened. And there was one of the co-student body presidents at Meridian High School told a story. She's been going to school with her fellow students for almost 8 years.
Yeah.
And it's only been this year that she's gotten to know their names.
Wow.
I mean, think about back in the day when you were in school, right? Yeah. When we didn't have cell phones and we really didn't have laptops. Yeah. We had desktops, and you were forced to talk to your friends and go with your friends, get in a little bit of trouble with your friends. Now, they don't even know the names of the people they go to school with. That's crazy. You go into a cafeteria at lunchtime and it's crickets. I remember when I was in, junior high and high school, they were telling us to be quiet, that we were being too loud. And now it's completely changed. And so another young lady in that same class, she said that she no longer has the desire to bring her cell phone to work. She leaves it in her purse. She leaves it out in her car. And she's not addicted to the notifications that happen out on phones, because that's what happens, right? It's like FOMO, fear of missing out. You want to know what's going on. You want to know what's going on after school or during school, or you want to know what your friends are doing, what they're talking about. And without those notifications, it just brings so much relief to students. I was going to say something about the notifications, but I forgot.
If I may, I've been chatting with a couple people recently about a couple people's names have come up as like hard charging professionals or supports for the Idaho community and things of that nature. And some of them, people have reported, they're like, I really liked this person actually, and they do a lot of really good things, but in board meetings, you can't get them off their phones. Like, they're always somewhere else. And the adults in the room are sitting there. I mean, these are all adults. These are people like in charge of large organizations. They're like, dude, what the hell is going on? Like, there's 0% chance you can be as invested in this conversation, in this meeting, as I am if you're on your phone. Now, look, if this is not an important thing, if you're sitting in the back of some presentation for some thing that somebody asked you to go to and you want to check, like, okay, I understand that. But if this is like, hey, we're the board, we are it. We're the decision makers. Thousands of people are relying on us to be all in and making the right decisions. And you're somewhere else, either for an entertainment purpose or for a work purpose. Right. It's like, listen, if you can't be at this board meeting for this board when you're supposed to be, because you got to be somewhere, like, you're doing too many things. That's not just something with kids. It's everywhere. Like, the addictive nature. I have a friend who's got, like, I got a lot of friends with kids, right? And he always, it's so great. He's got kids that still have birthday parties and the grandparents come. So, like, no problem. Grandparents are there. It's summer birthday party or something. Dude, he'll send a video in a group text to all of us. He's a jujitsu buddy of mine. And it's literally his in-laws and his parents with their cell phones. Like, they're passing, because he's like, old people go inside, the winter, summertime, and they're like, it's hot out there. I'm going to go relax, get like a cup of iced tea. And they pass out, but they all pass out with their phones in their hand.
They're like drug addicts that just OD'd like with like syringes in their hands or something. It's crazy.
Yeah. And it's one of those things that spans generations, right? Like, you can have a little kid addicted to it. You can have an older person addicted to it. But again, the disparity that we're talking about is if you have somebody who is allowed to engage in a certain kind of behavior that is detrimental to the education experience, both for them and for other people during school hours, there's got to be a conversation here where it's like, listen, if this isn't helping, and especially if it's detracting, what are we doing?
Yeah, exactly. And when you're a parent, you can't do it by yourself, right? So if all the cell phones are going to go, they all got to go at the same time, because you just can't take one cell phone away from Johnny because his parents are doing a better job. You got to do it across the board. And so that's what we did. But just funny story, my wife and I were recently at a restaurant. We looked over and these folks were having sushi, right? And they had it was crazy. They had this wine, this bottle of wine. The guy spent big bucks on this.
Bucks.
I'm like, that a boy, man. I'm like, bring it. I'm like, that a boy.
Wait, where was the sushi? Did you go to Zumiez or something?
No, it was Sakana. Plugged to Sakana at Meridian.
Okay.
So we were at Sakana, and I looked over, and he was on his cell phone and she was on her cell phone, and they were like having a wonderful dinner. They didn't say a word to each other. Not a word. And it was like candlelight, just having a good time.
They were texting each other.
I don't know what
from
they were
across
doing.
The table.
I'm like, not a dang word. And I'm like laughing at them and like talking to my wife. God. But that happens, right? Yeah. Happens all the time. So fast forward to the bill, and what does it do? What does our bill do? And so we took a light-handed approach. I'm a conservative guy. I don't like the heavy hand of government. I believe in local control. My past experience comes from the Meridian City Council. I was elected to the Meridian City Council back in 2017-18. I got reelected, and so my brain isn't partisan. I can't explain. I still think like
pragmatic. I'm filling potholes.
Exactly.
Potholes don't care.
I mean, people care about, first responders. They care about safe communities. They care about clean water. They care about their parks and pathways. That's how I think. That's where I got my start. So you put a Republican or Democrat, letter. It's hard for me to think. It's hard for me to think partisan. But that's where I got my start. So we wanted to make it be local control. So we said, okay, this is the policy. You guys, there's already probably, I don't know. I know that 93 school districts took advantage of the governor's executive order, $5,000. And so I know there's fair amount of school districts. You mentioned Valley View earlier, West Ada, Blaine County, Kootenai County up north. These are counties that have already implemented policies. And so we're like, hey, if your policies are working, and your West Ada school district, who's the largest school district in Idaho, I think that their policy might be a little bit different than maybe a school district in Riggins or Salmon or Preston or maybe even Pocatello. Sure. So we said, you need to put a policy in place by the end of the year. But you guys tailor your cell phone policies, your distraction-free policies in a way that best suits you and your districts, and put your school board trustees in charge, and listen to your patrons, listen to your teachers, listen to your students, and maybe call Dr. Bub at West Ada. He'd love to talk to you and tell you how he did it. It's working. Just some stats. I believe discipline at West Ada School District in middle school is down 150%. That's a big deal. That's a
big number.
Especially if you're an admin, right? If you're a principal or assistant principal and all you deal with all day long are petty fights and this and that, it's down 150%. They won't know about the academics for another year or so, but I'll bet anything that the numbers are going up. So
I couldn't agree more. There's explain the situation where you take 30 kids in a classroom and you give them all cell phones that are not geared straight towards academics, and their academics somehow go up. It's impossible. You might as well give them all small monkeys on their back that are just it's not a thing that's you're taking attention away. That's all it's doing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so we got a little pushback at the beginning when I started talking to my colleagues, both in the Senate and in the House. Hey, just ban the cell phones. Just ban them. And I'm like, well, you can if you want. We're not standing in the way. I think Blaine County banned theirs. I think up north in Kootenai, I think they banned theirs. In West Ada, I think it's bell to bell, no cell phones in elementary school and middle school, but they have no cell phones in classrooms.
Yes.
In high school. You can still have them in the hallways and at lunch.
Right. And the banning, again, as you're pointing out, you're like, listen, heavy hand of the state is not always the best option. So have a policy that reflects your community values first off.
Exactly.
Second, look, define a cell phone, right? It's even difficult when people just ban cell phones. Okay, great. Does that mean a flip phone with Snake? Do you want to ban that? What about a watch, a gizmo watch? Is this a cell phone? So first off, the idea that it's, hey, let's this big broadsword swipe and we're going to all of a sudden solve this. Hang on, there's nuance here. Second, maybe there are situations where people want parents in the community are saying, look, this is a value to us. Is there a way that we can work with the schools and the educators that see how our kids interact with these technological devices to minimize the distraction and damage they're doing? Exactly. There are all of these different considerations. So although I'm very sympathetic to, hey, ban all cell phones, I have 3 boys and they're 2nd grade, 5th grade, and 7th grade. I send them all to school with gizmo watches. They're in a little pouch. Right. They're in they can call us, they can voice text us, they can do whatever. I think it can call 3 or 4 different numbers. And I know then that my kid, one, has an emergency contact thing for me if they need it, right? And even if there is a true emergency, having 30 kids in a classroom on cell phones calling their parents does not allow for better and effective emergency responses, right? The answer should be get off your phone and listen to your teacher, right? And again, as horrible as that sounds, I had Lieutenant Sean Harper in from Meridian Police.
I love that guy. Shout out to Sean Harper.
Sean Harper was great. He's come in several times. And again, he helped Idaho write their emergency response protocol for active shooters. And he's like, listen, if you got 100 kids or, 30 kids in a classroom and 3 classrooms of those kids, you do not want 90 parents flipping out. First off, you don't want parents coming to the school. How traumatic is that? You have all these people swelling in. You have law enforcement. They don't know who the parents are. The parents are trying to go into school. Right. Anyway, I agree with you that it's like, hey, it would be great if we could just snap our fingers and eliminate this problem. But that's not, one, realistic, and it's two, not something that I think would largely be embraced by the majority of Idahoans. It's like, let the communities determine, have a policy, have an intent policy that was intent on reducing this problem, but let people figure out what that best policy is.
And, you know, I knew there was going to be some pushback during committee hearing about safety. What happens if there's a live shooter? You know who I called? Sean Harper.
There you go.
He's so good. He's so good.
Phone a friend.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm like, hey, I just need to seem smart. You know, like I know the question's coming. It's coming tomorrow.
Oh my God.
Hey, just make me
seem smart.
Yeah, make me look smart, Sean. So he wrote, you know, he texted me and let me know but it's exactly what you just said verbatim. He's such a good guy.
Right. Have the adults trained appropriately. You know what? One beautiful thing he said in a prior interview I did with him, he said, look, if you're a parent and you're concerned about your kids, which every parent should be, and you are worried about an active shooter event, which, yeah, you should be, reach out to your school. Find out what their policy is, because 9 times out of 10, when somebody reaches out and the school is able to sit down with them and say, hey, listen, this worst possible situation, but this is what we train to do. This is what the policies are. This is what the sheriff's department do, police department, all these things. That in itself will help people understand. It's like, okay, it's not my kid against the world. It's these adults that are going to put themselves in front of my kid and protect them as best they can. And it's not going to help them when they're shielding my children if you got 30 screaming kids on phones behind them.
No, that's true. Yeah, you want them to be safe.
You want to be safe. Yeah.
And another thing that we got a little bit of pushback on or questions about was, you know, there's kiddos or students who have medical issues that need medical attention. So there's obviously exemption for those kids as well.
That's great. But bottom line is your bill saying, hey, look, we collectively acknowledge that cell phones and are adversely affect education. So we are not going to tell you what to do, but you got to have a policy in place that minimizes this adverse effect.
Amen. I love it.
That's fantastic.
It's been really, really good. And for those that are listening, I highly recommend you read, if you haven't read, The Anxious Generation. It spells out so many facts and provides just very specific evidence that supports this policy. And I was blown away. I was really blown away. And I really do believe that this bill is going to save lives. I don't know if it's necessarily life or death, but it's really going to, you know, relieve students from the shackles of addiction, anxiety, you know, FOMO, whatever, everything that leads to, you know, God forbid, suicide. And it's going to be a big deal, and it's going to really change how students learn.
Listen, I second that emotion, man. Like, you got to read Anxious Generation. There are problems that people from a safety standpoint just cannot understand. When you talk about suicide, most people think like mental health, people get down and first off, they think, oh, that wouldn't happen to my kid. And second, it's like, no. There are these, I had Representative John Schertzen.
Oh, so great guy.
Great guy. Really enjoyed him. And he's a federal prosecutor, a JAG prosecutor, really, really solid individual. And we were talking about prosecuting in Idaho, because prosecution of pedophiles and pedophile rings has become a real focus in the last few years as people have realized there are these really big problems, you know, human trafficking, things like that. We had a sex trafficking bust in Eagle just like a month ago. We had a detective, Brian Pacheco, busted this, you know, massage parlor thing.
Oh, I saw that.
Right. It's everywhere. Okay. And what Representative Schertz was saying, he said, look, we had this example of this girl, and this is what people don't understand. You can have young people engaging on social media in good faith where bad things still happen to them because you make them a target. He said, look, we had this girl in Eastern Idaho, 7th grade volleyball player, normal kid, just posting pictures of her at volleyball tournaments, not trying to be seductive, not trying to be inappropriate. And there was some bastard in like Michigan or something who finds this. Because social media doesn't care. If you like looking at 7th grade volleyball girls, Instagram is more than happy to deliver the world's collection of 7th grade volleyball girls to your cell phone. So this guy gets a hold, this girl drops into his feed, and he starts up a conversation with her. Now you got to realize this girl may or may not have any idea who this guy is, that he's a guy. His profile could be another 7th grade volleyball player. We have no idea.
Exactly. Most of them don't.
And he engages in extortion and does horrible things to this girl. And they, the prosecutors in Idaho finally get a hold of this, and they transport the guy from his home state to Idaho to face charges. But as terrible as that is, you have to realize it's not always poor behavior that leads to damage. Most people, when I talk to them, it's like, oh yeah, girls are posting these inappropriate things. It's like, no, man, you could be a football player. You could star quarterback.
Anyone.
Yeah. Here's a horrible
No one's
scam.
exempt.
Star quarterback, in good faith, just goes ahead and makes an Instagram account with showing all his football wins. He's great. He's the hometown hero.
That was you, right?
No, I never. Listen, man, I'm not built for damn. Like, nobody smashes the moneymaker. I'm a jujitsu guy. I can't, anyway. So the point is this, there are plenty of cases in Idaho where somebody of notoriety makes an Instagram account and does things in good faith and is careful. They're like, hey, I'm not friending people I don't know, whatever. And they got big following. Fine. Less scrupulous people look at that account and they just copy the account picture for picture.
I know.
And now you have this copied star quarterback account that then starts friending all of the 8th grade and freshman girls coming to the high school. So just the existence of the great football player's Instagram account allows for a copy of that. And then this terrible person friends these girls and then extorts them and does all kinds of terrible things. Like, it is so bad for people. And it's not the kind of thing where you're like, well, I'll just make sure my girl's mental health is good. It's like, you have no idea what young people are up against when it comes to social media, not just girls, but boys. And it is so important for people, again, to your point, to read the anxious generation, to start paying attention to what's happening with their kids on their phone. Even in good faith operation, these things are incredibly terrible in the best day.
Right. And I want to make it clear that it's not because parents are bad.
Sure.
It's just that the kiddos are smarter. Our kids are just 5 steps ahead of us. I remember my son when he was in high school, and it's not like he was being bad or nothing, but the extremes that we had to get to make sure that our house was locked down was unbelievable, because they're so smart. They're 5 steps ahead of you. You think you have everything under control, and if you talk to the OG, Officer Gomez, we were talking about earlier, you're not. You're not on top of it. So it's just a huge battle that, at least at the school front, when it comes to academics and learning, we're doing the right things, and this policy is going to truly help, I believe.
Did you get any pushback from tech companies?
No, none. Zero.
None.
No, zero.
That's wonderful to hear.
No, they get it. I think everyone gets it. And that's sort of tough when you get the pushback from the tech companies and, First Amendment rights and stuff. That gets a little bit interesting, but yeah, no, zero.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
I worry about that a lot. I mean, I think everybody should be concerned with outside manipulation of Idaho. I absolutely hate it. I have no tolerance for it. And if good things or bad things happen in the state of Idaho, but they were at the hands of Idahoans, fine. And by the way, who am I to judge is good or bad? As long as Idahoans are arguing with Idahoans, that's all I care about. But it's when people come in and stop Idahoans from acting in what Idaho thinks is the best interest, or they insert misinformation or disinformation into the state to screw up our conversation, that makes my blood boil. Right? That's the number one way we're going to make sure we don't get what's good for Idaho.
Amen to that. And what sort of pivoting, from cell phone distraction free to big special interest that's intruding Idaho right now. Did you hear about these fake emails that came in, last week from?
I saw. Explain this, because I just saw a cursory screenshot and I was like, oh my gosh.
This is what we're talking about, right? I mean, completely different subject. I hate to even take a pivot.
No, please, and start from the beginning.
So starting this last election cycle, there was a lot of money, and you've spent on. Against some legislators who are currently in their seats. You spoke to Speaker Moyle and some other folks who had some big dollars spent against them.
And Chuck Winder. I mean, he had just as much. Moyle had something like $300,000 or $400,000 each against them,
right?
For mailers that were unbelievably just flat out falsehoods and crazy. Like you were getting 3 a day. People were sending me pictures of stacks of mailers.
Right.
And it's like, who would have thought that anyone cares about Chuck Winder from like North Carolina? Like, why does North Carolina care about Chuck Winder?
Well, it was Alexandria, Virginia, if you want to get super specific. But I mean, the same thing happened to pretty much every legislator. James Pexey and I, we had a little mailer sent out. Maybe it was a sticker stuck on front. It looked like a neighborhood watch. It was orange and black, and it had 3. I don't know if they were fake, but they had 3 folks that the government was after who had done bad things, whatever. And it said, and then on the back of it said, beware of these folks, but it's because of that these folks are on the loose of the gun policies, of the lack of gun policy that Representative Petsky and Senator Bernt believed in, that these folks are on the loose. And so I had a friend I've known since the first grade, and he called me. He lives in my district, and his daughter was crying. He's like, "Dad, like what in the world? These people are on the loose in our area, whatever."
And it's his fault.
Yeah, and it had my picture on the back of it. So these are the type of people that we're talking about. But there's all types of interests. Whether it's name the policy. There's always someone that's going to care a lot about it. And at the end of the day, Idaho is pretty cheap to do business in. And so they know that they can come in, spend X amount of dollars, and maybe get a return on their investment. So whether it's, folks who want to come in and muddy the waters with distraction-free learning or whatever the case may be, to unseat an elected official at senator, representative, whatever, they know that it can be done fairly easy. And so you have folks like Young Americans for Liberty. You have, I wrote them down. Let me see here.
Please do, because this is really, I've been wanting to talk to somebody about this, and this is really important.
So you have Young Americans for Liberty, you have American Action Fund, Make Liberty Win, and recently, this is the crazy part. So recently, I have a good friend, Representative Rod Furness. He got an email from himself.
Okay, so go back to the email. So we have these action PACs and political action organizations that come and dump hundreds and hundreds of thousands and billions of dollars, and they recently started sending out fake emails. Okay, explain this.
So as a legislator, it's not uncommon for us to get hundreds, if not thousands, of emails advocating for or against a certain policy or bill. And so recently we got emails regarding the grocery tax repeal, and I think they maybe put school choice in there. I don't remember. And I remember it was last week, and it was a big deal because it overwhelmed my inbox. I spoke to Representative Furness, and he actually got an email from himself, and he's looking at this email. He's like, I didn't send an email to myself about a grocery tax repeal. I actually had a dear friend, my neighbor, and she sent me an email, and I'm like, why is she sending me an email about
Doris?
This?
Why did you email me?
No, I actually wrote her back. I'm like, she just recently moved out of my district to Donnelly. And just jokingly, I said, does it, do I still have to listen to you even though you're not my constituent anymore? And I like, haha, just miss you, just whatever. And so after I knew this was a thing, I called her on the phone. And I'm like, hey, did you send me an email? Did you get my reply? And she's like, no, I didn't. I never sent you an email. And so why this is such a big deal is because I care what my constituents think. There's not a legislator in that building that doesn't care what their constituents think. I make myself available to my constituents anytime. In the off season, I'll meet them for coffee. I have a constituent that I meet maybe once a month at the park. We sit in lawn chairs and we chit chat about stuff. She likes election integrity. And so it's not uncommon for legislators to do this. So when you get fake emails or fake misinformation or propaganda, it really can affect how you approach a certain bill or a policy. And so this is what we're dealing with now. And these guys only care about one thing. They're doing this in order to create a division amongst our party and our state, and to create chaos and to really sort of control the narrative. And it's dangerous because a lot of the things they're talking about, number one, aren't 100% true. They may take a little, maybe like a 10% truth and make it into like something grotesque and disgusting about a legislator.
Yeah.
And it's bad. It's a bad deal. They're frauds, they're phonies, and they're fakes. And I'm so glad that they, because we've been touting this horn for like maybe since this last election cycle, and now they finally got caught. And it's about dang time.
If I may, like, first off, thank you for explaining all of that, because it's really tough for people to understand that this is a business. Like, people are out there, they do not care about Idaho. No. They do not care about the benefit, our benefit of our way of life. They care about getting people elected, getting people beat in election, and getting bills passed. They don't care what it is. They need to be able to go back to their funders and say, hey, last year we got these 10 bills passed in Idaho, or last year we got these 20 people elected in Idaho.
Right.
And the point is, we're going to show you this so you give us more money, because there are money bags out there, dudes who are like, hey, we want to push these agendas, and these organizations like, we're the guy to fund. We're going to be pushing it. That's the business. So when you say it's a cheap place to do business, it took me a while to understand, like, okay, but what's the business model? The business model is they are just political action characters who do not care at all. They're just trying to get funding, and they have to, if it costs $10 million in the state of Florida to pass a bill versus $500,000 in the state of Idaho, a bill's a bill. Yeah. A bill's a bill. Right. I passed 10 bills. Do you care that they were in Florida or Idaho? You don't care. We passed these bills, right? This is a huge thing that even with this email, this is going to be an ongoing communication with the state of Idaho, defending actual Idaho legislators and defending the Idaho process. It is going to be ongoing forever. It's like, there's not going to be a point when we roll into a primary or a general election when political action groups from outside the state of Idaho are interested in manipulating our elections. That's just it, right? It has to be understood collectively as a community. It's like, hey, there are ways that you can hear from people that are valid and represent that person. And these other things, you have to throw away.
Right.
Like, you have to let it go, because they can be bought and sold 1,000 times over.
Right. You know, I remember this last election cycle, there were mailers sent out that I supported porn in schools and porn in our libraries. And I would go to these doors, right? This is crazy. And I would knock on these doors, and they'd be like, Treg Bernt, you're the guy that likes porn in libraries, or like whatever. And I would sort of snicker, and I'd be like, let me ask you a question. Have you ever met anyone ever that supports porn in libraries? They'd be like, they look and they're like, well, no. I'm like, just because you got a mailer, why do you believe that I do? If you've never spoke to a single person in your entire life that supports porn, why would you think I do? Just because you got a mailer? It's a big deal. It's a real big deal. So if you get information, I don't want to paint with a super broad brush, but Young Americans for Liberty, American Action Fund, or Make Liberty Win, if you're getting correspondence from these folks, know that it's most likely misinformation, propaganda, garbage.
Yeah. I will tell you.
I might get sued for saying that.
You might. It's okay though. You might. It's not a guarantee. And what I was just going to say is, these groups are so aggressive and they're so crazy, and they play for keeps. Like, they are going to crush. And I'm really wondering, like, how long until they show up and like start sending out mailers against the ranch. Like, I'm going to die if they put my picture on a mailer and send it out, I'm going to die. It's going to be so great.
This, like, and they'll make you look disgusting. They'll make you look like you're 80 years old.
I already make myself look terrible. Look at this. This is not a face. That's like,
you are one good looking man. I don't even know what you're talking about.
I can't even grow a beard. Can I tell you?
I had a beard in the 5th grade, bro.
Listen to me. I'm Mexican. I can grow a mustache in an afternoon.
A mustache?
Mustachio. Listen to me. I can't. I tried, because I moved here and like all these dudes have like baller beards. I'm like, this is the play. Like, maybe I need a beard. I tried. It was like splotchy.
They got special lotion for that stuff, man.
No, they do. I can't. Listen to me. It's not something that
beard implants. You just
like beard plugs.
Yeah, you can go to Turkey and get them. I think. I don't know. You can get them for your head. I don't know why you can't get them for your face.
Like my leg hairs plugged into my face
At
or something.
Least that. At least that.
God, could you imagine? Oh, there was a guy I used to train jiu-jitsu with that was his name's Dan Black. He was like this fight promoter. This is back when I was like 30 years old, training every day. Before I had kids, my wife and I would actually travel around the States to do tournaments. I was like way into it. And dude, Dan Black, I swear he showered like once a quarter, and he had this long, nasty hair and this beard. And sometimes you'd be training with him, and you're like trying to choke. You get a rear naked choke on something. Their head is right here, and I'd be inhaling. Oh,
it works.
It works. It is the worst.
He was national champion.
Oh, dude,
Dan Black.
I can't talk about Dan Black.
Stanky.
It's stanky. Listen to me, Senator. I know it's a working day. Yeah. I so appreciate the bills you're bringing forward. I really appreciate you making the time here. I appreciate you calling out these bastards from out of state that are messing with Idaho. They suck. And everything I can do to help people understand that, look, you don't have to like the person running. You don't have to like the candidate running against. Like, I don't care what you do as long as you are doing it, because reality, we need Idahoans arguing with Idahoans. We need to ditch our information consumption from out-of-state mailers.
Man.
We need to insulate our state,
Agree.
lest it falls by the wayside of other states. So thank you for calling out that.
And you're doing a good job. Your podcast is blowing up. And I told you before, the mark of someone that is super interesting when it comes to this type of stuff is someone that you don't know their politics. The one thing I like about you is that I don't know what your politics are, and it really
this jacket doesn't.
No, you're good. You're a little country, but there's Democrats, Republicans who are country. Republicans don't have a monopoly on the country of Idaho. No, but what I'm saying is it makes you believable. It gives you validation. When you're bringing people from both sides of the aisle who are just smart and who have cool, interesting opinions and want to have a conversation.
Like good faith conversation. Good faith. Just explain it to me.
Exactly. Yeah. And I wish we did a better job with that in the legislature. I wish we could do a better job of sitting down with folks. Just because you're a D, just because you're an R, it doesn't matter. People just want good policy. So good on you. I hope you invite me back. And God bless America.
God bless you, sir. Thanks for coming.
All right.